Millisecond. How much time is a millisecond? Tricky question. Is this something you can feel? It's like, with second, it's like 1, 2, 3. I get it. Milliseconds? Not so much. Blink of an eye. 300 to 400 milliseconds. A gear change in Lamborghini Aventador, 50 milliseconds. A wing flap in a honeybee, 5 milliseconds. 5 milliseconds. Incidentally, that's also the amount of time you need to convince José Valim to start singing. Milliseconds. Speed is a feature. And especially when you're working on APIs, you build stuff for developers. Developers are going to use your APIs, and this is something what they really, really love. They love APIs which respond almost instantly. So that's why speed is important. So, where do we start? Let's take a look at this ridiculously simplified chart of request-response processing in Rails. And where can we dig in? Well, the answer is pretty simple. We start where our code sits. We'll look at the controllers. So let's take a look, what can we do to get that extra juice? I'm going to start with something that Rails gives us, and it's called Action Controller Metal. And who knows Action Controller Metal? Not bad, I'm preaching to the choir apparently. But a few words about it, because if you take a look at a normal controller, that's a pretty irregular one. As you can see, we have all these nice things. We have respond to, we have format, I can specify it. That's nice. But if I were to change it into a metal controller, that looks like the line count is similar, but there are differences. I'm getting rid of all the niceties, and I'm taking control. I'm going to specify the content type. I'm going to specify the status, and, well, of course, what the response body is going to be. And this is actually fun. And by having this control, I gain speed. And this is like the very simple benchmark I did, pitting a base controller and a metal controller against each other, and I get some increase. But this increase is on the level where Rails takes care of processing the request. You can see that, yeah, I get like 100 more requests per second, but the difference is actually very, very small. What you actually need to take care more is your code. And as you know, Rails is an MVC framework. But in the previous slide, I had this bit. And do you know what happens when you call this bit? Well, essentially, this happens. Now, when this happens, and I'm going to paraphrase Tim, bunnies die. Because you're actually saying bye-bye to the view layer. This method is called on a model or a collection of models, and you can pass on configurations options to it, but you do it within the controller. Where are the views? You essentially end up with an MC framework. And I don't think that's what we're going for. And where's the solution for that? And the solution is called the representer pattern. This term was coined by Nick Sutter, who released around December 2011, he released something called Roar, which is a very interesting gem, which is essentially it's a framework to allow you to build more RESTful applications. Nick specializes in REST and has a great approach. And he introduced the representative. There are the active model serializers by José Valim and Yehuda Katz. Great thing. And what is really great about them is they will nicely integrate with Rails. That bit I showed you before with render JSON, serializers work nicely, and they get the representer pattern. The funniest thing was that at the same time that all of these things were built, we built the same thing at Feature Simple. But we had one thing that was driving us, and that thing was speed. We wanted to get as fast as possible. And that's when the representer was born. The idea behind the representer is to give us this view layer back. And this is how I think about the representer. It's an object-oriented view. I have a collection of messages, for example, and I want to prepare a JSON representation. But I want to be able to take better control of how this exactly happens. So with representers, what you're going to do is you're going to introduce a new folder of an app, and you're going to introduce a new file. File is going to be called the message representer. And what's going to happen within that representer? Let's take a look. That's a very simple example. Imagine you have an API which namespaces within JSON, for example. You can do it, no problem. But what was important for us is that we don't expose all attributes. So I want to be able to specify nicely what attributes to expose within the API, hence the attributes method. But the real speed improvement comes from actually the way we think in representers. And this is an example of how to go crazy. Yes, that is my definition of crazy. Imagine I have 50 messages I have to fetch from the database, but these messages are associated with something which is sitting in a separate API, separate service. It is a separate API, so I need to make a remote call. Ideally, I want to do it so that I get the 50 messages, I get all the IDs, and make one call. One batch call which is going to get all the information, and when I'm almost done, just put the right images in the right messages. By changing the way of thinking to JSON, it's per record. Each object gets called. With representers, we think about the whole collection, how to improve the speed, how to organize the code better. And our APIs, lots of stuff talks to each other through HTTP APIs, so we needed to improve that, and it has proven to work very, very well. As I was preparing for this presentation, I actually added a few nice things, like, for example, has many and belongs to, which simplify writing this code. With a database, this will just aggregate the appropriate IDs and make everything sort of work for you, so you don't have to write as much code. It's a bit of an addition, and I'm hoping that it's going to stick. But what is really nice about this approach is that it's fully object-oriented. When I want to prepare a representation, I just pass it the collection, and then I call a method on it. There's no real magic inside it. It's just normal Ruby class. Because of the fact that this is also running on a simple convention, I have the message representer for the message. A pattern emerges, and it can be very simply wrapped up, and I get this. And when I run this, I get what you'd expect. And I'm happy. So, question is why? Why did we build it, and why is it so useful, and why am I so excited about it? And there are 3 reasons. The first reason is control. With representers, I have the layer in which I can specify everything I need about what attributes should be done, how this representation is prepared, to control how many calls I make, minimize them, benchmark it. And what I can do, because those are classes, or I can create multiple classes just for the right job. Imagine I'm here, I have fetching a message with additional stuff, but in some occasions I don't need it, so I have a separate representative. Again, trying to be simple and object-oriented. Second thing is testability. And this comes from the fact that it's a simple object-oriented approach. Because as it's a simple Ruby class, simple Ruby object, it's super simple to test. I don't have to worry about what query I'm passing, what objects I have there. The important thing is that I pass, for example, a collection of messages and I should get something. In this case, I'm testing that if I pass an empty collection, empty array, I get the right response. So you separate it out. It's not sitting in the controller. There's no need to test it in the controller because you can test it out nicely. And the last thing, well, the last but not least, probably the most important thing, which is the reason why I came here, is speed. By exposing this layer to ourselves and getting more control over how everything is prepared, we can actually get 36 speeds. Yesterday I actually had a chance to sit with Jose and benchmark some stuff. And I got some really interesting results. For example, I got a collection of 50 messages and I wanted with a user and a single attachment. With toJSON, I get the worst performance, something I expect. Active-Model Serializer is performing very well. But because I'm getting myself more control and hacking around with it and optimizing, I get really good performance with a representative. Looks much nicer on the graph, especially with nice colors. So this is what drove us to getting this thing started. So I'm standing here, I'm talking, but yeah, I'm quoting Linus Torvalds over here. So I'm going to show you code. Well, actually, I'm going to share the code with you. Let's take a look. There we go. Oh my. Nothing there. Let's fix it. And please work. Yes. Oh, incoming. We're getting there. There you go. And let's check if GitHub works. Yep. Sometimes you gotta take the risk. There it goes. So, to make it a bit easier, this is where you can find it. I encourage you to check it out. I encourage you to play with it. I encourage you to break it. This thing works great for us. That's why we finally decided to share it. But one of the reasons we didn't use Active-Model Serial is because we started around the same time, maybe even a month before, and we really like this approach. So please go ahead and check it out. And when you're working on your application, on your code, do what I did. And think about that Lamborghini. And think about that honeybee. Because one thing I just will not accept is that there's a car and an insect which is faster than my code.
questions.
Hi, in Representer, how do you handle serializing polymorphic objects? Say, for example, you have an attachment object, which can have like reference an attachable object, like a message or an email or something. Is Representer capable of doing that, or how do you handle that?
That's actually a good question. The way I would do it, well, is probably try to go through, either try to aggregate, or because we're introducing there's something called the field that you saw before, when you can define your own field. So I would probably use it within the field, and if there's any extra logic required to extract stuff, I would do that in that field. So if you have, let's say, like message, and you have, I don't know, messageable type, messageable ID. So what you're talking is basically you want a field within your JSON that gets this right object. So what I would probably go for is in the aggregate, extract all of this stuff with as minimum amount of queries as possible, and then within the field just get it out just so it's available.
Yeah. Hi. Do you also look? Yeah. Do you looked in Rubble, and did you have made some benchmark with Rubble against
we didn't have the problems with the routes. The biggest hit we got was actually in this area, mostly our code. If I put a fresh Rails application within my on my computer and it just started and performs really crazy. If I do something really stupid in the router, then that's most probably my fault.
You misunderstood the question, I think. At the gem Rubble.
Oh, sorry. Oh, okay, sorry. No, I didn't have a chance to check it out. That's the simplest question. The simplest answer to that question. Would love to check it out. So catch me after the presentation.
And which formats are supported? You wrote JSON, but it also means it supports XML and.
Currently supports JSON XML with the emphasis on JSON because we mostly use JSON all the time. But what we have on the roadmap is to first of all modularize the way the actual format is done, so it's easier to add new formats, and improve the performance of the XML one because we're just sort of delegating to XML for simplicity, because the emphasis right now was on getting to JSON work crazy as hell.
Here.
Where am I looking? Okay, good.
When you did your benchmarks, do you know what's the reason that the other serializers are like slower, or what's the secret sauce or something like that?
Well, there are some tricks that we do within representers. One being that we try to not instantiate so many active record objects. There's and something which is really cool for representers, because there are actually three kinds. There's the base representer that you saw, the simple representer, which allows you to play around more with active record instances, but the lightning representer, which is super neat because it skips active record instantiation altogether. It takes, for example, if you pass an active record relation to it, it's going to take the query, fire the query at the database, get the raw result, and just get the attributes that you're interested in, which works great if you just want the attributes. Because it just takes, I don't know if you're talking to a MySQL, it takes the hash that it gets returned and sends it straight to serialization. And those are some things that can really improve performance when it comes to playing with representers. That's one of the things you can do. The other thing is that in terms of why it's faster than to JSON is that we're sacrificing simplicity to get controller and speed. So you actually have to do a bit more because you write your query that gets this this thing in a more optimized way, but in return you get better. Well, ideally you get better performance. Any more questions? I'm here to help you, hopefully. Okay? Yeah, Bart is getting there. Yes?
No. I just wanted to pass my mic.
We have a special case at my firm where we use 2 active records to represent one object in a JSON layer. By your use of raw SQL, you could merge 2 active record tables and then just present it as one representer model, as a kind of a meta model or merged model.
Well, assuming that what you're doing is you're probably running a join.
No, not actually. We are fetching 2 objects. We are fetching a duty, we call it, and then the change to the duty. We merge those 2 to show the change duty before commit.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not joined. It's not a new object, but it's a view on 2 objects at the same time.
That's interesting, but to be perfectly honest, I have to see it. This is really hard for me to imagine. But if you're just calling methods later on, then it's totally doable.
Okay, and then if you call it, and if you get SQL, making a raw SQL statement, and then just mapping attributes to that SQL,
Yes.
your representable work.
That's the lightning one. That's the one that
one.
tries to be the fastest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Wow. He had to run all to the back.
Thank you. I was wondering, the JSON payloads, like how big are the payloads you're sending down? And have you investigated, like, if you're buffering up the entire JSON, have you tried like streaming or anything like that? Do you support streaming? Just, can you talk about
There
that a little bit?
we're actually investigating trying to stream, especially when we're talking to, we have some mobile clients, so whether they could actually do it, but it's still in a sort of like experimental phase. What we're trying to do is actually optimize this time that the server needs to spend on producing the whole response. So can't really say about the streaming this JSON. I know that we've been playing around with the idea with like the iPhone client, for example. So.
How big are the payloads you're sending down? How many K? Oh. How much JSON are you sending down? Or
Well, we're trying to dial down, so at most it's, I would say, like maybe 50K, maybe 100K, something like that. So the idea is to try to paginate it and keep it low, instead of actually trying to, for example, stream the thing.
Cool. Thank you.
Okay, I think there's one more question here. One more?
Yeah, any more questions?
Okay, one more, and...
One more?
Actually, that would be so cool if somebody asked a question over there, because Bart would have to run all over to the back.
Make him run, he likes running.
What's the future for this project, or what do you see that isn't being done now that you're hoping to achieve, other than just speed?
Well, speed. The idea, well, the whole idea was when we started off, we actually we made some design decisions which were aimed actually at not making us more comfortable, but actually getting even better performance. Was stuff like the fact that we did a lot of work on hashes. We're sort of like turning around from back now because we're not seeing the performance improvements we'd like, and it's a bit more of a pain. But the idea is to first of all, have the layer that's separate layer when we control view representation, so this view layer. Second, have an ability in Visual to minimize the queries, or either database or the monorepo queries to minimum, and have it in a way so that it's easily to wrap your head around. So somebody new is coming in, they look at it and say, okay, I get it. But third is, of course, that we want to get the fastest speed possible.
What did you do?
Yeah,
Sorry.
just quick question, quick answer, then
What
I
did
can
you do
agree to that.
before you were using this representative package?
Well, before this, we were using to JSON, and we did stuff like, for example, specifying the model, what are the public API keys. Don't do it. Bad idea.
Thank you. Thanks.